All right. Kanye's Megaverse. Should we get into this now?
Yeah. And just for the video watchers, don't be alarmed that we suddenly have new shirts on. It's nothing happened. You're not seeing things. You're not going crazy. We just sometimes, it helps to have a change of outfit when you're doing a song this long. It keeps you going.
Right. It's just a simple practice that most podcasters do.
Absolutely.
It's nothing to see here.
Yeah, it's a Kanye move on our part. Just like you could stop the show to fix whatever is not going right in your headspace, in your space, to make sure you're giving 100% the whole way.
Yep. And for us, that's a change of shirts, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I for one am wearing this shirt of the band Crying that is that their little mascot is a combination of Sonic the Hedgehog and the Totoro animal and My Neighbor Totoro.
That sounds horrendous.
It's awesome.
Okay, I'll need to look it up because the mental image I got immediately was not. It was pretty terrifying.
It is kind of like it's maybe it is terrifying. It kind of looks like a Pokemon.
Yeah, I was gonna say my image is like a Snorlax that's bright blue and
It's
has
like-
red shoes.
It's a Snorlax, but it's the size of a Ghastly. Or, what's that Pokemon? It's the next version of Ghastly, I think. Whatever the third evolution of Ghastly is.
Oh no, now we're blanking on third evolutions. Yesterday it was second evolution, or earlier in the episode it was.
I mean second evolution. That's what I meant.
Okay. All right, so Kanye's verse.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Anything different production wise? Like, does anything come in and out? It's pretty much the same throughout, right?
It's always changing in the background, but I wouldn't say there's any like notable or consistent change that I would track that signals like, oh, the song's doing this now. Like, it just seems to be random throughout.
Yeah, nothing conceptual in that way that's at least obvious to us.
The only thing I would say here is that Kanye's voice is full and clear in a way that it has not been yet.
No, which is something that we talked about on 808s as well. I know there might be some people that think, isn't that a little too random? It's like, well, you look at 808s and specifically Streetlights. Kanye, for a lot of the album, was 808ing his voice. Not 808ing, auto-tuning his voice. And in Streetlights, there becomes a point where his voice finally clarifies. And it's really cool. And then at the end, it goes back to being masked. Mm-hmm. And you can just kind of imagine that there's this idea that Kanye's using at points throughout his discography of masking his voice with autotune and what that means, especially the way we see him now masking literally his face.
Yeah. Except in this song, it's like he's buried by, that murky production and it feels like, he's like falling down like a quicksand or like a pit of like tar or something, and he's like trying to get out, and then like he finally gets out and he delivers this verse.
And what a verse.
Yeah,
what a verse.
It's awesome.
So there's oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, everyone talks about Fivio's verse and it's great, but like Kanye went ham on this. Like, he heard Fivio's verse and was like, I can't be stood up on my own out, but like I gotta deliver something incredible.
And we know that's the case because this was not present at the second listening party.
Yeah.
When Fivio's verse debuted, and everybody's just like, what was that? So one of the cool things I like about this opening, Kanye saying first to go viral. Oh, I guess one of the notes about Kanye's voice, like you mentioned his voice, and it feels to me that this wasn't recorded, and I may be completely off base because I don't know anything about actual engineering, recording, anything like that. But the sense that I get from listening to this is that Kanye didn't do all of his lines in one sitting. It feels like some of the lines are individual takes or brought in from other takes, because there are times where it just feels like his voice is, the next line is following up the previous line just a little too quickly to me, and maybe coming from a different spot in the headphones. So it feels a lot to me like YouTube editing, how you just have the pacing in YouTube edits where somebody might be talking, but they just do these little cuts in the middle of the video to give it this little bit of, tone, momentum that's really unique to YouTube videos. I'm sure people that spend enough time on YouTube have a better idea of what I'm talking about with me describing it poorly, right? Yeah. That's the sense that I get from some of Kanye's delivery in this, is that not every line was Kanye in just one take spitting this whole thing, but that you're getting this very like edited version that flows really well, but it allows it to have a little quicker of a delivery pace to it than if it was just one live take.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty common in hip hop, and I definitely think I've heard that in Kanye's music before. I actually feel like it's always pretty easy to pick up on. Like, there's a major difference between this and like No More Parties in LA, where Kanye is just go, 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 go. You could tell he's like breathing into the next line and just like going as hard as he can.
That's a perfect comparison. No More Parties in LA does feel like one take, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Or at least like a lot of it is.
Yeah. So we have Kanye start off by saying, first it go viral, then they get digital, then they get critical. No, I'm not doing no interview. So in these first two lines, you can just see this idea of, I think, the process of cancellation or negative happenings on social media. Mm-hmm. Like a soundbite, Kanye says something or makes a tweet or a post and it goes viral, and then it spreads all over the internet, which I guess is the same thing. Or people go digital when he says they get digital. So it's like it goes viral, then people hop on the internet to start saying things about Kanye. And when they do that, they get critical. And at that point, people want to do interviews with him for him to explain his words or explain his actions. And he's just like, no, I'm not doing no interview. So it's the basic process of this negative stuff that goes on with Kanye and the media, or Kanye in the public, and just kind of an example of the internet at this point and all these scandals that happen on the internet.
Yeah.
And the fact that Kanye did feature like DaBaby during Jail Part 2 and kind of has this interesting relationship with, interesting is probably not the right word, but has this relationship with people that are under fire in the public arena and in the media. It just seems like it's something that's on his mind a lot. So him starting off this verse with that seems to ground this and connect it back, I think, to jail. And also is a nice parallel construction with how Fivio starts his verse saying, look, when I was in jail, I was low key. And Kanye is then describing his version of jail, right? So it's not that he's gone to the physical jail the way that Fivio has, but he has gone to social jail plenty of times.
Yeah, it is an interesting change of pace for Kanye, and I would say a welcome one, because like, you know, the viral, digital, critical part has always been the cycle of Kanye.
Yeah.
Like, he says something and then like everybody reacts, and it's not that he always used to do interviews in reaction to that, but he always did seem for a while to have a reaction to things and would get on Twitter and go against, like, you know, the criticism he's getting or try to explain himself. And I kind of like that he doesn't do that anymore. Like, not that I don't think he should defend himself because he can't do it properly. I'm not saying it that way. I just like, there's no need to defend yourself. I just did a video on this, but Lil Nas X went on the Breakfast Club and was talking about how he loves Kanye because he always just says what's on his mind, and he's created the space for him to make mistakes, and it's totally okay to make mistakes. Like, you're a human being, you're allowed to, even if you're not making a mistake, you're allowed to just say whatever you want and suffer the consequences later. And I love that Kanye like has that about him. He doesn't really care if he says whatever he says rubs people the wrong way. And in that sense, I don't think he needs to react to anything. People can get mad and yell at him and get on social media and, you know, do the things they do on Twitter. But Kanye's just Kanye. Like, he just says what's on his mind, and like that's what motivates people. And now the fact, you know, in the vein of the song, off the grid, he's truly off the grid. He doesn't need to like explain the things he does or says. Like, he lets them kind of stand for themselves and lets people talk about them, lets you react to them, and lets it digest, and doesn't try to color or shape the way you think about it. Like, I kind of like that about him now, that there's a bit of a mystique about him, and you kind of actually have to do work if you're going to figure it out.
And there's also something about not feeding the trolls, right? You have media that'll make headlines out of anything that he says or does, and if he tries to correct the record, they're just going to make headlines out of the correction or ignore it completely, which feels, I'm sure, even more defeating in some ways, that the thing that you said that got taken out of context a lot of times gets all this attention, and then when you speak out to correct it or add information to it, they don't give it the same attention. It also makes me think back to how he started the song by saying, all the smoke got a scent, all that smoke heaven sent. Everything I spoke, what I meant. So he starts off in that verse very much aware of getting smoke from the public and speaking in a way that might upset people, but meaning it. And then he continues in that vein of, I'm going to say what I say, and then it goes viral, gets digital, critical. I'm not doing no interview. So you get a little bit of continuity from how Kanye started the song to how he's now beginning this verse.
Yeah, I like that.
But then it might also be a Fivio shout out. We do know that a little later in the song, Kanye references a Fivio song a little more directly. And Fivio it tends to, there's a complex interview where they talk specifically about Fivio saying viral all the time, that he talks about things going viral, like he frames things in terms of things going viral. It just seems to be something that he was concerned with, and others had mentioned that he says viral in songs a decent amount. So I wonder if it's starting with the word viral is a little bit of a nod to Fivio,
Right,
which would be kind of a clever double entendre, right? So like first the song like had this viral portion, which is Fivio's portion, and now like I'm coming through.
yeah, that would make sense. I think you mentioned, we were talking about Fabio's verse, how Kanye's verse in a lot of ways is an answer to his verse, and how Fabio's talking about like, you gotta what does he say, you gotta get used to this when you're in the industry, you gotta move different when you're in the industry, and how he's like, he's entering the industry and he's kind of looking around and seeing the way things are and how he's going to position himself. And Kanye is somebody very experienced in the industry and the way people can react to you. So you could see like these nods we're seeing the Fivio. It could be in that vein that he's kind of responding to him a lot of ways and trying to give direction.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, young cub, like watch what the lion does. Nah.
Yeah, if it goes viral, just like, who gives a shit, just ignore it.
Yeah, and that's why I got a mask on my face. So I'm not doing no interview, mask on my face, you can't see what I'm finna do, which is pretty funny. I mean, Kanye hasn't, the first time somebody tried to explain why Kanye's wearing the mask, I think it was Boo, it just said that Kanye's wearing it because it looks cool, and that was that. And then it seemed like it was definitely part of the performance. It was part of whatever was going on, especially when we had that photo of him putting the mask on the ground before the third listening party. And when Kim came out dressed as this spirit at the third listening party, Kanye took the mask off to face her. So the mask started to feel a little more performative. And I think this might be the one time on the album he addresses it directly by just saying, you can't see what I'm finna do. It just kind of gives him a little bit of protection, and maybe he does view it as a way of combating in just some small way this idea of going viral and digital and critical and the demand for interviews. There's just this little bit of anonymity that he can grab back and bring into his life, even if everybody knows it's him, even if it does bring him more attention in some ways. There's just something within him that feels a little better with it, which I think he did an interview recently or talked with the outlet in Germany where he might have mentioned that wearing the mask, just he feels better with the mask on. He likes wearing it.
Yeah. It kind of lends insight into the Black Album cover, I think, because I remember when there was starting to be speculation that would be the cover, that some people were annoyed because it is kind of a bit of a cliche thing to do. Other bands have done it before.
Right.
But Kanye, I feel like he just has given the idea of a Black Album cover so many meanings. Like it could mean, I guess the obvious meaning is just like mourning, for his mother. It conveys death. But the idea that it could also convey like anonymity and that you can't see what he's going to do, that he's kind of, his albums have been a slow progression towards removing the ego. And this could be the ultimate doing of that you can't see what he's going to do. He's not going to respond to things. Like he just is going to live as himself. And now it's extended to like his avatar on Instagram and Twitter. Like he doesn't have a face. It's just black, and you can't define him. Like it's the absence of color. It's kind of cool in that way.
Yeah. All right. Like everything too with the outfits that he was wearing. Like there's been this blackout aesthetic that's not just part of the album aesthetic, but becoming part of his day-to-day of this era.
Yeah.
So,
And not the absence of color, sorry. All colors combined. Kanye has all colors.
I was thinking it, and I was like, is that pretentious of me to point out the difference between like white being the absence of color and black being all colors?
It sounded cool when I said it, but I should say it correctly.
Oh, man. The fact that we even know that. All right, so had to move away from people that's miserable. So that also comes back to the idea of off the grid, right? You're moving away. We know that Kanye in 2018 bought the Wyoming property, which is something we said at the beginning of the episode with the title. But it seems to be that he might be making a more direct reference to it in terms of, I had to move from Los Angeles to Wyoming because Los Angeles can be so miserable. I'm guessing that there might be people that try to read even more into that and try to assign it to very much like implications of how he felt about being around like the Kardashian family all the time, or the like Calabasas people all the time. But I feel like given the support that they showed him and continue to show him, that would be a little bit of a too subjective.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Like just the hustle and bustle of LA, like the expectations you have in that world from people around you. Yeah. There's no way he's talking about the Kardashians. Like they've always seemed to have a really good relationship.
Yeah. Aside from July of 2020, when he was very upset with Chris.
Well, Chris is excluded from this. He might still not like Chris very much.
Yeah. We don't know where that's at, but I would be cautious in assigning that specific meaning to the Kardashians or anything like that. Don't want to link you. I ain't finna sit with you, which this feels like it's getting more towards people in the industry or people that are coming to him for handouts, a little bit more in the vein of real friends, right? So he doesn't want to like put you in contact with somebody else or even link up with you. Like he doesn't want to sit down with you and talk with you, like mentor you. He's not doing the dinner with you, like take the $500,000.
So do you think these lines are directed at us?
I think they might be directed at us. This would be like the second time on this song that Kanye's talking to us.
He knew we'd be at the Chicago show, so this makes sense.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not going to do this interview with you that you keep saying is going to be 2 hours, 6 hours, 24 hours. Pick a time frame, first of all.
Well, first of all, it's going to be a 48-hour interview that we will edit down to 4 hours. I mean, we're going to cut and splice out all the time we spend together. It's going to be a slumber party. We're going to watch movies. There'll be a lot involved. So there's nothing up in the air about that. 48 hours.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad we finally landed on a firm number after 4 years of doing this joke.
It could change next week, though. It depends when Kanye gets in contact with us.
That's true. He's following 90 people on Instagram and none are us.
He's following 90 people? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
He should definitely be one of those.
See, that's what I was saying. Before we started recording, I was like, I'm kind of like getting antsy about Kanye not following us on Instagram. And Travis is like, oh, I don't care. I'm like, it's 90 people.
Instagram, maybe it's because I think Instagram is so dumb.
I've just been pandering by posting movie images and tagging Kanye in the movie images. I'm like, nice. I feel like he wants to see that, right?
You don't want to seem too desperate, Chris. Be careful.
I know, but
but you are desperate. So
I am. So, all right. So Kanye is just kind of furthering this idea of disconnecting from people. Don't get me mad just because I don't want to injure you. Yeah, right. Or no, ain't finna talk to you. Ain't finna get with you. So just continuing that vein, and then saying, don't get me mad just because I don't want to injure you. It's like, don't get me mad for any other reason, because if you get me mad, I will hurt you, and I don't want to do that. Like, don't make me be the bad guy here.
Again, another interesting moment, like the way he's painting this character, like, as somebody who has found God and, like, you know, presented a much more peaceful version of himself on Jesus is King. Like, nice talking about fighting you. You know, he's lifting weights at the Atlanta show. Like, he's giving off a strange image.
Yeah, and I mean, we did talk up front about how, you know, how does Off the Grid fit into everything, because does it have the thematic stuff? And this is like quite an aggressive start, and quite the, like, this contrasts heavily with the Kanye we're getting at the end of the album.
Come to life.
Yeah, right.
Where a 6-year-old is playing piano for him.
Yeah, right.
Or not
right?
6-year-old, a 6th grader, I think.
A 6th grader, yeah. So, yeah, I do think that contrast is probably, like, meaningful here. And that this is maybe the most aggressive that Kanye is, aside from his verse on OK OK.
Hey, he is talking about fighting somebody.
Yeah. Not just fighting him, like, I don't want to injure you. Like, that goes beyond fighting.
Yeah, right. Shit.
And then he goes from just like talking about injuring to she put my paintings inside of her living room, which, okay.
I really like this line.
It's a great line. It just kind of, what a transition, right?
It's cool because, I mean, because he is, I mean, we're talking about how angry he's being and like how mad he is at all these people and how he's not going to talk to anybody. And then all of that is followed up by like, she put my paintings inside of her living room. And I can't say specifically what he's talking about. It kind of made me think of when his painting was sold, you know?
Right.
Like that childhood painting.
What was that? What's that show called? Antique Roadshow. They valued the paintings at like $20,000, and somebody, I think the cousin, sold at one point last year. So they held on to him for a little bit long. It was his cousin's, like a distant cousin's husband that had the paintings and brought them onto Antique Roadshow. I think it was a year or year and a half later that they sold.
Oh, interesting.
Or in the process of selling.
But it just makes me think of something like that, a very like small, humbling moment that, I mean, this little moment doesn't matter in like the grand scheme of Kanye, who is now a billionaire, who has like massive worldwide influence. But to see him following up all of this stuff of like him not caring like what you say about him and how you just want to use him to get ahead in the industry, and like, I don't want to injure you, to like, she had my paintings inside of her living room, to just kind of reflect on this small thing that is a representation of like your artistry and like the small reach your artistry can have, and how you're part of this one person's like little setting. I don't know, there's something like lovely about that image to see him like make that kind of transition. It's he says it angrily, but it's like, to me, it's like a nice thought.
It's a quiet moment following some very like brash and loud moments. It reminds me in some ways of Gorgeous, not necessarily in the tone or attitude, but just in the idea that when we do our Gorgeous episode, our second time doing a Gorgeous episode, and the first time we talked about how much that song's built on vignettes in a way that a lot of other Kanye songs up to that point weren't necessarily done. And you have that moment, like the girl tells the director she's trying to get into school. He said, take them glasses off and get in the pool. And it's just this moment of her sharing something very vulnerable. And this person with power that represents the industry is dehumanizing that and just reducing her to another girl that should be in the pool and kind of be in the background. That moment always stood out to me on Gorgeous. And there's something, I think, also subtle and a little beautiful about she put my paintings inside of her living room, coming after what we had already gotten.
It's like, yeah, totally what you said, like the image that's created by saying this, like you're totally right, like noted that moment from Gorgeous, but it's also, it feels like a continuation of like, yay, kids see ghosts and Jesus is King, like him highlighting this little moment in your life that's really rewarding amidst like disarray, you know? I mean, it's like all this negative energy in your life. Like you can focus on this one thing that pushes you forward and reminds you of like why you do what you do.
Yeah, like my art is meaningful. It could also just be like straight up bragging as well.
It could be, yeah.
Like, I'm at the point where I make paintings and people buy them and put them in their living room.
Hell yeah, I'd buy one.
I guess the other way of viewing the line is that he bought like they're not paintings he made, but paintings he bought, and some random girls putting them in the living room. I don't know if it's like,
I don't know. I will say also, when I first read the line, I wondered if it meant like Kim or something, or like his mom putting up paintings when he's a kid, but I didn't know how that fit into anything, why that would make sense.
Yeah, same, right? It's the she is vague enough that you could start to apply specific people to it, but then you're left wondering like, okay, how does that fit into anything else that's here? So it seems like it's just a casual bragging line that's also getting at Kanye's like artistry, his significance, and he transitions from that to look at the problems and issues I'm living through, which I mean, does he view her putting like his paintings inside of her living room as a problem and issue, or is it just serving as a single thought that then gets moved on from?
I think it's the second one, which I think makes it work. The fact that it is stream of consciousness in that way, and Kanye just kind of, it's more him reflecting on a situation and what is and isn't motivating him.
Yep. Okay. So look at the problems and issues I'm living through. It kind of goes back to that first to go viral, then digital, then they get critical. They trying to drown me. I rise to my pinnacle.
Hell yeah.
Right. So as people are trying to bring me down, I ignore it and just get even stronger, which gets back to when Kanye made Ye versus the People with T.I. I was blanking on T.I.'s name for a second. T.I. went out there because he was so upset with what Kanye was saying politically that T.I. actually flew out to Los Angeles to talk to Kanye. They sat down and they had this big discussion, and there's video footage of it. And Kanye talks about how all the disagreements, like saying things and having people correct you, even if you're wrong, is like steel sharpening steel, or the pressure that creates a diamond. It's the way in which you learn and grow. So he was saying he doesn't mind being wrong. He doesn't mind taking a position and then amending the position, because when you take that position, people respond and you learn to either believe in the position that you have, or you get educated and change the way that you're feeling, which then went into the song Ye versus the People. But I think that's one of the things that Kanye is kind of rechanneling on this song is when they try to drown me, I rise to my pinnacle. This tension, this pressure is what helps make me great because it just sharpens me.
Yeah, I love that about Kanye. It's one of my absolute favorite things about Kanye.
Yep. Which probably the same thing you were talking about with Lil Nas X, right?
Right. Yeah, just like fearlessly yourself and not afraid to make a mistake and then grow from that. Like that seems to be the big problem. Celebrity culture is like you can't really be yourself, and if you're never yourself and you're never learning from your mistakes, like how are you growing in that position and learning to be better in that position? I don't know. It's just, that's the awesome thing about Kanye is he doesn't care. He's ready to be wrong and grow.
Yeah, which sometimes can be a painful process, but seems like it's moving in the right direction, you know?
Yeah.
Walk through the block like the neighborhood general. So
this made me think of that Insurance General, you know, those like Shaq commercials.
No.
Oh, you've never seen those? Like I think Charles Barkley did one, and now Craig Robinson is in one. I don't know why I've seen so many of them. I've just seen them like anytime like a TV's been on in channels and you see commercials, like I see the latest Insurance General commercial and kind of wonder if he was referencing that, but I don't think he is.
And I imagine it might get back to some of the like street references, gang references that we've seen.
Right.
In terms of like, I can walk through the block. Like, I don't have to worry about like what, like, going to the South Side, which I mean is even something that comes up on Pure Souls, right? Like, we in the South Side and we outside, which is kind of a statement of his credibility and his reputation.
That's a good point. That does seem to be a feature of Kanye's verse. Like, as we talked about, like, he wants to injure somebody. Later, he talks about a stepper. He's going to talk about Folk Nation. Like, that does seem to be a motif in his verse. Like, just the streets and I don't know, not necessarily violence, but like the potential, like for like collision or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in the gang culture that has that sense of tension to it, but I wonder if on the album Kanye is trying to get at the sense of community that's also part of it, and
Totally, yeah,
trying to drive it in that direction. So yeah, you do see him, as you're saying, making reference to like, I don't want to injure you, and then the neighborhood general. So he's definitely making references to a lot of street culture dynamics.
Yeah, right.
Drop me the low, and then that's where I send it to. Which, I mean, in that as well, like, drop me your location, and that's where I'll send.
Location.
Yeah,
I didn't no idea what it meant. I thought it meant like lowdown or something. I was like, I don't know what he's trying to say.
No, drop me the low, and that's where I send it to. So
I sound old there. Oh shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we always do a little bit, but there specifically, yes. So just kind of, I think, getting to that idea of like, yeah, I can send like, guys to your door or like to fight you, or I will send myself, and maybe you can try to say a send it up reference, like I'll get there and we can send it up.
Yeah, right.
I was forgetting you. Now I remember. Now I remember. Which kind of also gets to that idea of confrontation, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, like I was forgetting you. I wasn't going to do anything about you, but now I remember, and we're going to have some fighting going on.
Yeah, right.
And then he follows it up with did what I want and I say what I want, which calls back to the first verse where he says everything I spoke, what I meant. But this is also probably a Fivio foreign reference, the song 13 going on 30. Fivio in his verse talks about, or in that song talks about, guys gave up on me, watch them give up on me. And then I made it and rewarded everybody who waited on me. I watched them switch. They not about to switch back. Life is a bitch. I get you bitch smacked. So there's some like fighting for people that doubted him, that weren't there with him. And now he's ready to kind of rise up. But in the verse, he says, where is it specifically? Okay, in the second verse? No, the main verse? Yes, the main verse. He says, now I'm making bigger moves. I've been lied on. I've been ridiculed. Them guys pitiful. They'll switch up on you for an interview. Yeah, they'll switch up on you for an interview. All in the front. Everywhere I go with a gun. Every case I caught, I go on the run. Every folk I see, go in the trunk. Every guy, take him home in a blunt. Every night I'm going to go home when I want. I remember I was down in the dumps. I was feeding guys, giving them lunch. Guys forget, but I remember. So it's kind of an interpolation of that. Guys forget, but I remember. He's like, I was forgetting you. Now I remember.
Yeah.
So Kanye kind of taking a little bit of that energy and a little bit of the overall energy from that 13 going on 30, where it's just like, yeah, people are doubting me. They're being critical of me. Like, they switched up on me. Well, guess what? Like, I'm ready to come through.
You know, that interpolation really made me realize that the one thing Donda was missing was a Jennifer Garner feature.
Could you imagine? It just gets Jennifer Garner.
There's just like a Capital One commercial in the middle of this, or whatever thing she does. I don't remember what commercial it is.
You're really into. I don't have cable anymore. I don't know anything about these commercials.
I don't have cable either, but you know, you see them on like Hulu and stuff.
I have adless Hulu.
Oh yeah. See, I need that. I need to save the extra $3 every month.
Yeah, for the content, right? It's a content play, so you
and
can.
YouTube has a lot of commercials.
See, I have YouTube Premium.
Oh wow! I didn't even know people did that.
Yeah. Not having the commercials is really nice.
They have gotten really annoying lately.
Yeah. It's just like you save 15 seconds on every, or like 5 seconds sometimes on every video that you want to watch. No mid roll.
Yeah.
Yep.
By the way, YouTube, if you want to sponsor the show,
yeah, please,
we're happy
YouTube,
to have you.
send us more money. And then the outro of the Fivio song as well is, don't let them guys tell you you can't do this shit. The key to this is to be a better version of the last you. Whether it was a pic, a trip, your video, your bitch, upgrade. Everybody think you're supposed to look at what's lit and then follow that. Don't follow that. Which feels very off the gritty, right?
Right,
like,
totally.
Don't be part of what everyone else is doing. Go off the grid and do your own thing. Stay true to you. Like, keep upgrading like who you are. And not to say that, I mean, we know that Kanye has to be familiar with Fivio's music in general, or that he listens to the music of people that he brings onto the albums. Otherwise, I don't know if many of them would make the cut. But it's curious that there's some decent overlap between this reference and that song in general, and which you can see in terms of this verse, Donda as a whole, etc.
Yeah, cool.
And then the next line, so I was forgetting you, now I remember, did what I want and I say what I want, and I thought you was with me, like how you get sensitive, which that could be a Drake reference. Kanye has 2 other Drake references on OK OK, which he specifically calls out a line that Drake said in a song about Kanye. Like, I seen him and he looked like a ghost. So Kanye's just saying, like, I look like a ghost, yada, yada, and then calls out, like, all you guys sound like me. And then later on Pure Souls, he shouts out having, like, I forget what like God's plan. He uses a specific reference to that, and having money to give $1 to everyone, which is a lyric from a Drake song as well. So Drake has a song on Views called You With Me. And in the chorus, he goes, it's like a lot of games being played. How's it going down? If it's on till we gone, then I gots to know now. Is you with me or what? So it's possible to read this as Kanye saying that he was forgetting Drake, but now remembers Drake and the beef that they had, because he wrote this verse after Drake released the Trippie Redd Betrayal, right? So it's possible that it's just a shout out to, like, all right, you reignited the feud, I remember, and like, when did you get so sensitive? I thought you was with me. And that channels what Fivio is talking about in 13 going on 30, where you have people that switch up on you, that change up on you, that start to doubt you, and that whole process.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense of all the songs that are going to have a Drake reference. Like, this is the verse Kanye recorded before the Chicago show. That's right when the Drake beef was heating up. That makes it sound like he's heating up beef. And, you know, he had the woman on the porch with him as a nod to Drake. Like, it just seemed like he could have brought this energy to that show.
Yeah, like very much feeling a little more like ramped up in terms of the feud. So that goes next into, I got this God power, that's my leverages, which is funny. So, like, you know, having God on his side, that's what gives him leverage. I got this holy water, that's my beverages, which is such a Kanye line.
Yeah, it's great.
Such a Kanye line. I love it. I got to help myself out of selfishness, which is an even more Kanye line. I got to help myself out of selfishness.
The only person that can make me less selfless is me.
Yeah, right. My selfishness makes me selfless.
Yeah.
I just bought a floor out of the Selfridges. So that was confusing to me for a long time. I thought for a moment he was saying, I just bought a flow out of like suffrages. And I was like, is he saying he bought a flow? Oh. But no, bought a floor.
I thought he was talking about that fridge that someone took a sandwich out of.
Oh, of course. Of course it's a Wolves callback. Selfridges, also known as Selfridges & Co., is a chain of high-end department stores in the United Kingdom. Thank you, genius.
Yeah, somebody was on that one.
Oh, somebody 16 days ago, Lavilla1 says, might be a stretch, but I think Kanye said flow, not floor, implying that since he's rapping on a UK-style drill beat, he got his flow on this track from Selfridges, which is a store in the UK.
A lot of layers here.
Yeah, I heard flow, so
Yeah,
I could see that.
It could be FLO, like apostrophe.
Like, oh, yeah, I just bought a flow out of Selfridges, so not saying floor entirely, but flow.
Yeah.
Okay, that could be. So it's either he just bought a floor of this department store because it's a high-end department store and he's just saying, much like Playboi Carti in terms of going to Dover Street Market and shopping a little, Kanye's on the level where he just buys the whole floor. Or it could be a reference to having this UK drill style flow that he's using for this song.
That's it. I guess I more took it after reading that Genius line. That does make sense to me because later in the song he talks about how much money he has and like there's a tone, there is that kind of tone to this verse of how awesome he is because of how much money he has. and not just like, oh, I'm awesome because I have money, but like showing you what he can do with that money.
Yeah, it's definitely like a level up from Fivio, and in contrast to where Fivio's at, where Fivio's concerned about making money and like getting on. Kanye's just like flexing like, I'm on.
Like we're not even talking about Playboi Carti, who talks about throwing money around at Onyx.
Oh yeah, that's true. He's just doing his thing. Yeah. I got to make sure they know who they messing with, right? Which that would also go back to the idea of him purchasing something, right? Yes. So he buys all this stuff just so people understand that, like, look, I got to tell them sorry, they too delicate. I got to tell them sorry, they too delicate. Yeah, so he lets people know who they're messing with, but then he has to tell them sorry because they're too delicate, which kind of goes... Go ahead.
I was just saying that almost seems like, oh, I got to tell them sorry because they're delicate. Like it's him saying like, I'm not going to say sorry because they're too delicate. I'm just told that I should be that way.
Yeah, right. It feels very much like, like I don't, yeah. And also goes back to the idea of like viral, digital, critical, like there's just a sensitivity to things now that can set everybody off. So Kanye is kind of playing the game a little bit, doesn't want to play the game a little bit. It also made me think of Follow God and him saying like, what is it? Why am I blanking on the Follow God line? I'm not angry. I'm just focused.
Yeah.
And like yelling at his chauffeur. Like, it's like,
yeah, right.
Yo, it's on you. Like, I'm not angry. Don't get upset at me for being angry. Like, I'm just focused. Right. Calm down. I got to stay with God where the blessings is. Okay. Yep. Which feels a little ironic in some ways, where he's talking about being so aggressive, like flexing on people, and is like, but, got to stay with God. Through God, all things are possible. Mm-hmm. I ain't delivering heavenly messages just for the hell of it.
Oh, which I say that line a lot.
Yeah, that's a bar. That's a bar. And it's just like, yeah, he's serious about this. It's not just for the hell of it that he's like talking about God. It's something that he thinks is very meaningful. It's something that he thinks he needs to do. And it's something that he thinks uplifts him as well, right? Which, I mean, maybe that gets into a little more of the arrogance. Like, I got to stay with God where the blessings is. He's staying with God because the blessings, which feels a little less than humble in some ways. It feels a little more materialistic.
Yeah.
Which
I also yeah, right. Go ahead.
I don't know how much I should view that as ironic versus just like generally like meaningful, and there's just a contrast between the two lines.
Yeah. I really just love the line for like maybe there might be like a term for this, but just like the flow of that line is so cool. Like how many syllables he fits into like what is clearly like one clean line. Like I ain't delivering heavenly messages just for the hell of 20s. Maybe I miscounted that, but like it's so cool like how he just like spaces each of those like those syllables out and like delivers one clean line. It's so cool.
I got 18.
Yeah, 18 is that's what I counted the first time when I was doing it in my head, and then I did 20 here in the moment when I was trying to be cool in the video, and 20 felt wrong.
Yeah, it is really nice, and it stays with what is it? Is it iambic pentameter? It just feels like
Right.
I ain't is not I am, or is it? I ain't delivering heavenly messages just for the hell of it. You get that nice like stressed unstressed through most of the verse in these clean syllables. So
Yeah.
I think that's why that line just like hits very nicely.
And it's also just like a great moment of painting his personality. Like it's all this build up to this line, and then he says it just for the hell of it, and he like stops and he's like, God, you really just get a sense of him in that moment.
Yeah, and that transition then to it slowing down, like
Yes.
don't try to test me. I keep it clean, but it can get messy.
I love it because like the music's been dropped out for a bit. He's been talking about like, the holy water and the Selfridges and everything. And it's just been him kind of naked, with like nothing really painting him. It's just awesome.
Yes, it is. I really like this portion, and both like his and Fivio's, they both have that slow down before they like pick back up, and it's great because you're like, oh, it's ending. It's not ending.
Kanye's is like so epic though.
The poet in me just wants to point out that one of the reasons that line also is very nice is that you get deliverin with the V in the middle, matching heavenly with the V in the middle. So that
like
double
that.
middle V, and then messages has that J sound, and then just also has the just like the J. So you get this mirroring of 4 words in a row of the V and then the J, which gives a nice balance to that line with I ain't. So delivering heavenly messages just for the hell of it. So you get like a nice balance on either end. It kind of extends a little more with the for the hell of it rather than just like ending with another word after just, but poetically
Just
very
'cause.
nice. Yeah, just cause.
Doesn't hit the same.
No, because delivering hell has the L sound that's in delivering in heavenly. So hell works in that. And then it's at the end goes with ain't. So you get the balance and just. So ain't just it. You get that ending with the T sound across the line as well. So the T sound ends up being the backbone that creates like a triptych for beginning, middle, and end, while you have the other little moments of rhyme throughout.
You're throwing a lot at me, Chris, all at once. You need to slow down. Now you're getting the triptychs. Jesus.
Yeah, sorry. So moving on, don't try to test me. I keep it clean, but it can get messy, which again, this is another, as you're pointing out earlier, another moment of like, I will get violent with you. I will hurt you. Like bad things can happen if you mess with me, which does make this very much the most antagonistic song on the album.
Oh, man. I just say, I almost want to say after every line, like I say this line all the time. I guess I say all these lines all the time.
So is Off the Grid risen in your rankings?
Definitely Kanye's verse. Like I just think Kanye's verse is so incredible. You could just tell he was really motivated by Fivio to deliver something awesome, and he really did it.
He really did. I guess there's something too. We're seeing now like a really back and forth with, I got to tell them sorry, they too delicate. I got to stay with God where the blessings is. Like, don't try to test me. It can get messy. I talk to God every day. That's my bestie. This back and forth between the intensity and then the godliness that, I mean, maybe Kanye just thinks nothing of it, but to me, it just reads as such a dramatic juxtaposition between this like anger and this intensity and then the statements of godliness that ring a little false in some ways in comparison to where we see Kanye reach at the end of the album.
Yeah, we talked about a little bit on the Praise God episode, or not the God Breathed episode, how there is that dichotomy a lot throughout the album where for a while with Kanye, like he would just talk about like demons a lot, or he would specifically focus on God, but like there seems to be there's tension on this album. Whenever he talks about God, like he's also talking about like demons and the devil. They're almost always mentioned in the same breath. And And maybe that's what he's kind of doing here. He's playing on himself a little bit in that way. Not that he's necessarily giving himself over to his demons by acting this way, but like maybe he is a little bit. Like maybe he's not acting super Christ-like, and he feels the need to juxtapose these actions with like, no, but like I got God on my side and I'm justified.
Yeah, like we talked how on this album specifically we have like multiple references to angels and demons on the shoulders, or feeling the demons like have you on these songs in this first like act, with Heaven and Hell being the moment where it kind of crescendos with making like devils pray. And then you get Kanye having this redemption arc in the second portion. I'm wondering if it's a little bit of showing rather than telling, of having this kind of moments of demonness or devilishness showing up in Kanye's lyrical portions in this first half.
Yeah, it makes me think ahead to Jesus Lord specifically. If we're thinking of the album being a progression of himself and kind of moving away from this energy, on Jesus Lord, he says, God got you, the devil's watching, he just peeking in. I know I made a promise that I'd never let the reaper in, but lately I've been losing all my deepest friends, and lately I've been swimming on the deepest end. Like this idea that he is giving in a little bit, and he is like kind of letting the reaper in and letting himself be consumed and not acting the way he knows he should be acting. I mean, that all feels like this could be part of the narrative of the album.
Well, and how's this verse start? It starts with him talking about like had to move away from people that's miserable, don't want to link you, ain't finna sit with you, ain't finna talk with you. So he's talking about going off the grid. He's specifically talking about not wanting to interact with people. And you can view that as justified in some ways from the celebrity perspective of you do have a lot of people trying to take advantage of you. But we also know that Kanye has had this real friends moment where the people around him have been trying to use him for things, and he's had to feel like distancing himself from them. And if he's channeling that kind of thing, like my attitude towards people has reached a point to where I'm not just pushing away other people that are trying to get something from me. I'm pushing away everyone because I think they want to get something from me.
Right.
And we're seeing that in this early portion of the album. And then on Jesus Lord, as you're saying, he's admitting, I've done these things. I've lost people that were close to me, and I'm feeling alone. And in the midst of that, this like devilish side, the Reaper is coming in a little bit more.
Yeah. This album, man, it's opening up.
I know. And then, man, you think about the isolation of the first listening party versus how many more people were around in the second and third listening parties.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I talk to God every day. That's my bestie. They playing soccer in my backyard, which I do like. I wish we would have gotten a I am a God like phone call, but alas, or not phone call, but just conversation.
Right.
They playing soccer in my backyard. I think I see Messi, which I like that this went TikTok viral because it was something that people just weren't picking up on right away, but that this was a reference to the fact that Kanye was at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and the first weekend after the initial listing party, there was a Atlanta FC game at the stadium, and Kanye went wandering around the stadium watching the soccer game, and was in the crowd, like seeing things. So yeah, they playing soccer in my backyard is clearly a reference to him staying for so long at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and Mercedes-Benz Stadium was essentially his house at that point. And then playing on It Can Get Messy to I Think I See Messi, which Lionel Messi, arguably the best footballer of all time, unless you're on the Cristiano Ronaldo train of being the best footballer of all time.
And if you're not on the Pele train.
Yeah, right. Right. Now you sound like an old head, Travis. But points for knowing Pele, you know?
Yeah. Also, if you're not on the Tom Brady train, but that's a different kind of football.
How dare you? No, I like Brady, but I know that there's going to be millions of listeners out there that are just like, how dare you mention Brady?
I just said his name. I have no opinion on Tom Brady. But yeah, I love that he mentions Messi here. Like, This is a classic Kanye move. Just like mention the best person at something and just like liking yourself to them.
Yeah. Which is funny because there's no way Messi would ever be playing stateside, you know?
I know.
But
it did make me instantly go look because I honestly don't know a lot about football/soccer. And I was like, is Messi on the Atlanta team? Like, holy shit. And of course he's not.
no. No. But I mean, Beckham ended up playing like Major League Soccer for a little bit. And
Right.
who's the tall guy that just scores a ton of goals? I forget his name. Somebody, tweet at us. But he's legendary for just being this like godlike goal scorer.
Cool.
He recently came to the MLS. So, okay, anyway, I think I see Messi, and this money could never neglect me. And this is where Kanye picks back up.
Yeah, the music really kicks back in, and it goes, from here on out, he's just going.
And Kanye, you pointed out Jesus Lord, Kanye talking about like losing people close to him. Him saying, and this money could never neglect me is very, like, talk about the state of your relationships.
Yes.
He's saying, like, people might neglect me, but this money will never neglect me, I feel is the implications of this line.
Yeah, especially moving forward, like he props his money up as like, a defense mechanism, like what's going to get him forward. I think you're right. It's a telling sign of like the progression of his character and him once again for like the fourth album in a row, realizing that like the people in your life are what matter a lot more.
Right. Something he keeps coming back to.
Yeah.
I pray that my family, they never resent me, which, I mean, that's very emotional. And begs the question, like, why would they resent him? Well, he's going off all the time. It could go back to the things that he's saying, the things that he's doing, like the actions that get him in trouble could be one of the reasons the family resents him. But it could also be that he's just like the divorce, like him running around the world all the time.
Maybe he considers you and I his family and he doesn't want to push us away.
I could see that. I think that's a fine reading of the line.
Yeah. I mean, kind of, if you want to just put it to bed and make sure that never happens, follow us on Instagram.
Yeah. Simple as that. Then do the 48-hour interview.
Yeah, come on.
So I pray that my family, they never resent me. And she fell in love with me soon she met me. Which I guess Kim? Potentially?
Yeah, I was wondering about this because it's, the classic Kanye thing to do is whenever a she is mentioned, that she is a representation of something larger than himself and like his relationship with celebrity or music or whatever. He does that kind of stuff all the time. But he does mention his family and then he says she. So like I was having trouble assigning it a lot of meaning outside of Kim. But it's also hard because like I don't know if the rest of the verse is about Kim, so I was having trouble tracking like the flow and narrative of these lines, if there is any.
Yeah, going from like my family to she fell in love with me immediately makes you think of Kim. I mean, we did get the anonymous she earlier about she put my paintings inside of her living room.
Yeah, that's
which
true.
Could it just be like him flexing about new women in his life? And that's one of the things, like, I pray that my family, they never resent me because I'm bringing around these other women, which is often a controversial aftermath of a divorce, is when the parents start to date other people. Could be going there. And then with the transition to, as you're saying, that next line being, we both got a bag, but my bag is more heavy. Is this him getting back to just general braggadocio in comparison to other rappers or other celebrities? Or is the we, again, a reference to Kim? And he's saying, Kim and I are both rich, but my bag is more heavy. And it's just kind of like a petty post-divorce line.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely could be that, and him just exaggerating a little bit. I mean, we don't know what went on behind the scenes of them early on. They seem like they're have a good relationship now, but like maybe things were contentious at one time, or maybe he's doing that classic Kanye thing where he just like paints a storyline that isn't totally truthful, like him cheating on Kim at the beginning of the life of Pablo. Like we're all pretty sure that didn't happen. So
Yeah.
that feels like it's just like that is set up so he can express something more real and honest later. Like maybe that's what this is.
Yeah, like the dramatizations that occur on an
Yeah.
album when you're trying to paint a picture of what is happening or capture a mood or atmosphere. Like Yeezus is clearly an exaggeration of things that Kanye was going through in real life. And Bound 2 is probably a little more of an exaggeration about how hesitant Kanye was to marry Kim or get into a serious relationship with Kim than what he was actually feeling at the time, right?
What if Jesus was 100% autobiographical? Like everything was true.
I'd lose my mind.
Kanye just
I'd
had like
lose my mind.
one wild week in his life, and it was like, oh, let's make this into an album.
Yeah, right. But yeah, the Life of Pablo is a great example, or we're pretty sure things on Ye are often an exaggeration, right?
Oh, yeah,
it's not
right.
like Kanye when he was making All Mine seriously was trying to like bang other dudes' girls, right? But it's
Say bane other dudes. I was like, I've never listened to this song correctly.
no, no, not what I was trying to say, but it's.
You didn't even have a pause after dudes or anything. I just heard that and was like, what?
No, there's just that immediate processing, right? But that's not something that it seemed like he was looking to do at the time. But in trying to demonstrate the ego and the bravado and the ramped up ego that he's feeling at that moment, he takes it to that place. Same kind of thing with Ecstasy. And when you hear the lyrics of Ecstasy, that was supposed to be the song in the place of Yikes. And it's Kanye really like channeling that. Yikes too, as well, right? Like, you know, ask your girl, she had a shot with Ye, like, should give up everything or should like do anything.
Yeah.
It's not something that he was probably feeling in terms of his like actual day-to-day life and marriage with Kim, but is fitting for the ego and bravado he's trying to showcase. So is this fitting for the ego and bravado he's trying to showcase in terms of like, see, initially in the post-divorce, I was being like a dick
Yeah.
or feeling a little more defensive. So I'm putting that on display where by the end of the album, you're seeing him be a lot more forthright and taking responsibility for things. And there's a clear contrast between how he's talking about the divorce on Jail and potentially Off the Grid and Believe What I Say versus how he's talking about it on, what is it? Lord, I Need You, Pure Souls, and Come to Life.
Yeah. Master storyteller.
Yep. Okay, so we had to stop counting. It's getting too petty. I mean, that also seems to get to he's in a competition with somebody he's close to. Mm-hmm. But then he says, "You're not a real stepper. You can't overstep me," which I don't think he would be saying that to Kim. That seems
More
to
in
get
a
back.
symbolic sense, I guess.
Yeah. That seems to even be getting back to kind of like the general industry.
Yes.
Like talking to somebody in the industry that he's at odds with.
Yeah. I mean, that's what made me question if any of these lines were about Kim, if they were all just more general, because from here on out, it doesn't really feel like he's talking about Kim. It's just him like putting himself above whoever's in competition with him.
Yeah. And, you know, the definition on Urban Dictionary for stepper is a person known to carry guns and is always ready to fight, typically known not to fear jail time, usually quiet people not known to start anything, but will not hesitate to engage in any kind of fighting. Don't mess with him, dog. He's a stepper. Submitted by Daily Gangster, January 23rd, 2020.
He's very busy on Urban Dictionary.
You've seen the Daily Gangster before?
I follow his annotations, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. No.
Oh. That had me very excited. I don't know why. Really?
It's me,
earnestly...
Chris. I'm really
Could you imagine? The betrayal. The people, like, Urban Dictionary would have to shut down.
Yeah, it'd be done.
Anyway, so Kanye, again, getting into something that is emblematic or has a tone of violence. Like, you're not somebody that's actually going to, like, fight and go all out. Like, I am. Which we have seen him in the public space, like, overstep, right? When it comes to saying the things that other people won't say, or even when he was in his Twitter beef with Wiz Khalifa, and he really seemed to overstep things in what he was saying about, like, Wiz's kids, and when he was upset about Drake in 2019, all of the tweets that he was posting that December, it was like 119 tweets or 121 tweets. Mm-hmm. So there's something to both, like, the street aspect of, like, the gun violence, jail time, that kind of thing, but also the societal aspect of, you're not somebody that's really going to cause controversy like I am.
Yeah, right.
Which just gets back to that dynamic that we pointed out, from Fivio being in jail to Kanye being in, like, digital jail.
Yeah, right.
Just sit back and listen and watch how he bless me. Again. It goes from this moment of, like, kind of violence and conflict to, like, God blessing him. He wait till I fall and then pull up and catch me, which, if that's not foreshadowing.
Yeah, right.
Your check is too small, which Remote Control would be the moment on this album that, like, God kind of comes through and is like, I will take that.
Right.
Your check is too small. You can't run up and check me. Which could be a hockey, you know, in, like, hockey and soccer, you check people.
Right.
So it could be a little bit of a callback to that, but it's also just, like, a check Kanye in general. Like, if Kanye says something, somebody might try to check him, like, put him in his place, might try to, like, educate him a little bit and be like, Kanye, you can't do that. Kanye's like, you don't have more money than me, so as far as I'm concerned, you can't, like, try to correct me or tell me what to do, because look how successful I am.
Or it's a chess reference. You know, the guy comes up and he, like, checks the king of the knight, and Kanye's like, I'm just going to take your knight off my queen. Fuck you.
How did I not see that? Can't run up and check me.
I've been playing a lot of chess lately.
It does kind of sound like you can't run up and, like, checkmate. Check me, checkmate.
There you go. Hey, I like that.
Now that is stretching and reaching. Nah, I get him fast. See? Okay. So he gets to people faster than they get to him?
Sure, yeah.
And then you feel away, then go pull up and get me. So if you think you can get me faster than I get you, by all means.
Wow. A lot of push and pull going on here.
Might do something wild if I feel like you press me. Ooh. You know?
Here we go.
And this is kind of another promise of violence, right? Like, if I feel like you're pressing me, then I might do something wild. And he's already talked about, like, injuring people, that he's, like, a more of a stepper than other people. Just the amount of, like, subtextual violence in this verse is kind of shocking. So you feel away, then pull up and get me. Might do something wild if you feel like you press me. And we get another parallel construction between this and the end of Fivio's verse, where he's saying, they want me to lose. I've been trying so hard not to move reckless. And so Fivio is saying, like, yo, I gotta finesse with everything. I can't move reckless. I have this future ahead of me. Like, I'm trying to do better. And Kanye's at this point where he's throwing all that out of the window and feels confident enough in both his position in the world and God's protection that he will do something wild, because he doesn't feel like there's going to be any consequences to it, because all the smoke is heaven sent, right?
Yeah.
So the arrogance at this point is off the charts.
I love it.
Yep. And just the threateningness is off the charts. And then he comes back with, we off the grid. This is for my kid. which feels so funny because none of that verse felt like it was necessarily for his kid.
Yeah, this chorus is great because it really like it bleeds out of the verse in the same way. Like the tone hasn't like been disrupted at all. It just keeps going all the way into the outro.
Yep. And the outro starts off with a reference to gangsters, right? Pray for what folks and them did. And folks is the casual reference, as we pointed out earlier in the show, to Folk Nation or just gangsters in Chicago. What it's Folk Nation and People Nation in Chicago are kind of the divide between groups of gangs.
Yeah.
So Kanye's saying pray for what folks and them did. So it's like you need to pray for these people that have done some consequential and probably ungodly things. Following that up with only thing we pray, God forgive, give. May God forbid, bid. I don't know. So it feels like Kanye starting off the outro with this reference to gangs and gang violence potentially and asking for God to forgive them feels very in line with his own verse, feeling a little more aggressive, a little more combative, and almost asking for forgiveness for his own behavior.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely look forward to Jesus Lord again. Like, maybe we're going to keep coming back to Jesus Lord over and over as we go through this album. But like, it really does seem to be a centerpiece of the album in that way. And
yeah,
like a lot of the references and motifs are heading towards that song. And that song, the outro, you know, you have Larry Hoover Jr. talking about his dad, Larry Hoover Sr., who founded the Gangster Disciples and came up with the idea of the Folk Nation Alliance and just what has happened. We'll talk more and more about them as we go along, but like what happened to people that were in that community, specifically Larry Hoover, and how he was given a life sentence for what could be chalked up to like economic crimes, you know, like stuff like people don't typically go to jail for life. And this idea of forgiveness and having the freedom to correct your wrongs, like the idea of what freedom is, it's all building towards that in a way. And it's just so interesting to see Kanye foreshadowing that here in a song where he's being really aggressive and really not acting in a way that he will act by the time we get to Jesus Lord.
Yeah. I mean, and you need that contrast for Jesus Lord to really like hit, right?
Oh my
so
gosh,
it's not,
it already hit. Like now it's going to hit harder.
Yes. And that's the thing, right? It's not just Kanye acting aggressive, but it's also Kanye acting aggressive and making references to street lingo, to gangs in general, and then tying that together with the like centerpiece of Larry Hoover Jr. talking about his father, and on Jesus Lord talking about violence and what happens when somebody feels pressed and gets wild, which is something that he talked as well about on Cuddy Montage, painting this picture of like revenge in the streets, and that it's all kind of this cycle of people who are hurt by others then hurting others and perpetuating this cycle of violence within the community. And how do you break out of that? And Kanye in this early portion of the album seems to kind of be in that mindset, but then by the latter portion is trying to break out of it.
Yeah, totally. I always think of Cuddy Montage when I listen to Jesus Lord.
Yeah, right. And then even the song Jonah, we talked early on about how Jonah was, you know, the biblical Jonah, but it's a Vori song about a friend who lost their life to gun violence.
Yeah.
Originally. So that's another huge part of things.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. He hit one of the kids, took off his list. I don't quite know what to make of that. It's a little
I don't even know
jarring.
if that's what he says.
Yeah,
I like
what
hit
else?
one of the kids sounds right, but like took off his list. Like I don't know what that means. And Genius thinks like it's talking about Brad Pitt, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
No, the Brad Pitt thing was infuriating to me because it's just like, oh, Kanye's making a reference to Brad Pitt, who he mentions like a few songs on. And the Brad Pitt reference is on Believe What I Say, or he says going through some celebrity issues only like me and Brad would know, which is in reference to the fact that you have headlines, you have tabloids and websites now at this point that consistently talk about the end of your relationship, that you're getting divorced, that the other person's cheated, that there's a new like love interest, that people say things. And even though you can know with 100% certainty that the tabloids are making those things up, that it's not true, there has to be moments over the course of years where you start to think, you know, who said that? It's like, was there a source that told them something? Is there something? Like, is there something that I don't know? And how frustrating that must be, because we don't know what kind of impact that legitimately could have on these relationships to start to cause stressors or concerns that do eventually drive people apart. Mm-hmm. There is talk in Angelina, like in the divorce proceedings between Angelina and Brad, that Brad, I think it was like, may have struck a kid. I don't know. I remember seeing like a tweet about it, or like it trending, but I don't remember the actual details of it. But that would be why they're making the comparison to Brad in that moment. But it just seems like such a disconnect from Kanye randomly pointing that out here between what he's talking about on Believe What I Say, that I can't assign that specific of a meaning to it and think that that should be the first way people should take this line.
I guess if anything, I just took it as Kanye like positing a situation that could happen to him, or like what people could be saying about him, like, oh, Kanye's off the rails, like he's somebody who could hit one of his kids. It's such a random line, and it's so vague that like I had no idea how to assign it outside of like Kanye himself and him just like kind of being outside of himself and be like, this is how people talk about me. But again, there's no context. It definitely isn't the Brad Pitt thing. That's all I really know.
Yeah. I mean, we have this idea of like Kanye saying this is for my kid. So to then have this idea of like pray for what folks in them did, and saying that like, you know, others hit their kids. So like you have me doing things for my kid while other people like hit their kid. Like hopefully people can like, you can pray for them and they can like find their way. And it might not even necessarily be that they like literally hit their kid, but just emblematic of the difference between Kanye and others, and more metaphorical for the way that they're living their life in an incorrect way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then at that point, like if you do hit one of your kids, maybe this took off his list as in like you hit one of your kids and God's going to leave you behind. Like you're no longer on the list to get into heaven.
Ooh, yeah. Or Santa's naughty and nice list, so like you're not on the nice list anymore.
Of course. And then look what they did. Pray for the crib, which pray for the crib there, you'd imagine would be like pray for the kids, pray for the kid. Like the crib doesn't feel so much about the house as it does about like a child.
Or just like, it could be pray for the house hold, you know, like the family dynamic in that house.
Yep. No, I like that. So what, that would just kind of be starting to paint this picture of this like troubled domestic life.
Yeah.
Where Kanye is painting more of a picture of like, you know, my domestic life is much better.
Yeah.
It's definitely an element to like think on, but it does get back to this idea of like demons and demon behavior versus like angel behavior, somebody messing up and needing like prayed for, needing forgiveness. Right. And even if Kanye's looking at somebody else here that messed up their household, we know that this album is Kanye in a lot of ways coming to terms with the fact that like his household ended up getting messed up. Right. Maybe not from that specific action, but from like decisions that he made that were problematic that he has to kind of figure out.
Yeah, it's, even if we can't quite figure it out, like, it's just so interesting. Like, I love Kanye for that. He just, like, he'll do shit like this and you're not even quite sure what he's doing, but like, it's interesting and like it'll make sense and pay off later.
Yeah, and I'd say generally the way to read it at this point is just part of the redemption arc, and this idea that people will mess up, they need prayed for and forgiveness, and that God has that ability, which seems to be the arc of the album.
What's the sense of meaning to these final two lines?
Oh God. Okay, so some say Adam could never be black because a black man will never share his rib.
Rib.
Yeah, which I imagine that line to get more like flack and controversy on social media than what I saw, like than what I've seen. I haven't seen anybody really be critical of it.
Yeah, maybe because everyone just knows it's an awesome line.
That it's just like a joke that Kanye can make and get away with.
It does seem like a very, like, that is the strange thing about it, is after all of this, where it hasn't really felt like Kanye's kidding at all, like, it seems like a joke at the end of the song. To wrap up this like pretty contentious song, it's both a joke and like, I thought about these lines, and it's also very to think about that, to think that like Adam couldn't be black, like that you didn't come from Adam. Like, if you believe in God, like, oh, you came from Adam and Eve, but like, if Adam wasn't black, how could that happen? And like, I guess I was thinking of like the philosophy that must come from this, and like you thinking about your own life. And I don't know, it's such a weird jam-packed two lines to end a song that they really, these lines really seem out of nowhere to me.
Well, yeah, you get at that point of, there's all this controversy, right, of the like skin tone of Jesus, as people almost always in America whitewash Jesus.
Right.
And it's like, Jesus was a man in the Middle East. Like, what skin color do you think he had? And that tends to be something with biblical figures in general. They are almost like entirely whitewashed, despite the location being in the Middle East, like near Africa. Like, is it possible that a lot of these figures were black or weren't white? Yes. Right. So getting into that concept with the first line is very, as you're saying, there's a lot to kind of dig in there philosophically, and goes into one of the big, I think, points of contention with organized religion in Europe and America. But then following that up with the line that he follows it up with, which is like getting into like racist caricatures, which it's Kanye saying it, so people are less critical, but it does feel fitting to me with Kanye talking about a verse in which people try to cancel you and get upset with things that you say, that he would end the verse with something that is controversial and that people could get upset with. Like, is it something that's going to go viral and get digital? Is it something that they're going to be critical of? Like, is it something that they don't like what he said, so you feel a way? Are they going to pull up on him? It almost feels like a challenge to me. Like, I'm going to end this song with this line that might be controversial, and if you have an issue with it, go ahead and try me.
I like that. That's cool. I definitely wasn't thinking of it in that way. I mean, at least you've like pieced it into the song a little bit, which I like. But I was thinking about too, just more largely in the scope of the album and this connection he has with God, and the idea of like, you are a God yourself, or there is a God within you. It does make me think that, Adam was made in the image of God. So if Adam is white and God is white, like, you didn't come from this man who was made in the image of God. So like, how in tune with God could you ever truly be? Or like, I don't know. I mean, obviously I think of the Bible as like, as somebody who's not very religious. Like, I like to think of a lot of the Old Testament stories as like parables and like reflections of society, and just like these sort of lessons. And situations that paint like how you can grow and how to be a better human being, and just like kind of this symbolic landscape for how civilization has grown. But if you really wanted to if you wanted to get specific with it and like say like, well, if Adam was made in the image of God and like we all came from this one person, like how could it be that he was black? It's just an interesting thought, I think, like heading forward into the album about where Kanye's trying to establish this connection with God and live out God's word and be in tune with God, to think back to this moment like, but I didn't come from God. Like I didn't come from Adam. I wasn't made in the image of God. I think there might be something to that, but I don't know.
Which I would say that Kanye is like challenging, like that he wouldn't be on the doubting side of it,
Yes.
but he would be challenging others that would say that it's impossible.
That's what I mean, and probably I'm not expressing
Yes.
very well.
And specifically why this is getting to the story of Genesis, Genius has handy the lines in general. The Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man." So that's why Kanye is talking about like sharing a rib at the end, which we had talked about this specifically going back to God breathed, and the idea of right before this portion, it mentions God breathed the breath of life into Adam. So there was something about bringing somebody to life, which made a nice juxtaposition between God breathed and come to life, being the last song on the album. So there's another support here with this line, just showing that Kanye is aware of the Genesis story and specifically that portion of the Bible, and making another reference to it in the very next song might also be something just to ground people in this idea of God bringing someone to life and being concerned with this, idea of what's it mean to be breathed on by God, and what's it mean to have God kind of carrying you and be, as you're saying, in God's image. And Kanye, for a lot of this album in this early portion, feels like he is maybe not living in the proper or best way until the very end, which we keep harping on. He finally comes through and gives over to God, lets God take control, and is more aligned.
Yeah, love everything you said. I'm also glad you read that line from Genesis, because it lets people know that we know about that line. Because back in our jail episode, a lot of people are commenting that, like, they talk about stoning in the Bible. like we don't know that. So unless we specifically point out something from the Bible, we're going to get shit for it. So I'm glad you did that.
Right. If we didn't read it, they'd be like, how could you not know that it's a reference to Genesis? It's like,
I don't think people are stoned in the streets like these days. I know it's from the Bible.
Yeah. It's a very biblical moment. Very biblical moment. When that there's a whole thing too with, like, Kanye's mentioned Farrakhan in the past, and having Jay Electronica later on this album. There's a whole thing about like black people in Africa were one of the like nations of Israel and one of the tribes of Israel, and that there's this connection between like the chosen people and people in Africa, and how that's not talked about a lot, which is something that Farrakhan talks about. It's something that Jay Electronica makes a point of in a written testimony. And I haven't gone line by line through Electronica's verse on here, but I wonder if there's another mention of that. It's also something that Nick Cannon is a believer of, and we know that Kanye texts with Nick Cannon, that both are very religious and will just text Bible verses to each other, which is something that we learned in the interview that Kanye did with Nick Cannon. So I wonder if part of that line could tie into this idea of those beliefs as well, and not getting as into it as those guys do, but it just kind of another thought that would be tangential to Kanye having those kinds of conversations with people like Nick Cannon and Jay Electronica.
Yeah. Again, another point that'll probably open up and reveal itself as we go forward on the album.
Yep. Okay. Well then.
Ooh, an extra size episode of Watching the Throne. I hope everyone's happy.
Yeah, this was tremendously long.
I was really stoked to talk about Kanye's verse. I didn't know we were going to spend that much time on it. I guess the amount of bars he has, like, it's like enough for a regular Kanye song, so it would take this long.
Yeah, right. And we did spend an hour on just Donda chant, so
that's true.
So we
we have the potential to go extra.
But going through the song how we have, I do feel much clearer in terms of how it fits onto the album. I think everything that we're pointing out about the aggression or just like attitude of this song really is fitting for this early portion of the album and does kind of ground Kanye in a place of feeling a little more antagonistic, feeling a little more of the embodiment of that tension between the demons and the angels that will be solved as we go through the album. But especially with Vori's portion on God Breathed, now we have Kanye acting how he acts on Off the Grid, and then Weeknd on Hurricane talking about like specifically needing rescued from these demons, heading then into Praise God, Jonah, okay, like all of that, it feels very fitting to me at this point.
Yeah, the song has definitely grown in my estimation. As a lot of fans of the show know, I controversially had this ranked pretty low after the first listening of the album, and I think it's just because in general these kinds of songs aren't my favorite. Like, it seems the most in tune with modern hip-hop of like any Kanye song on this album, and I like when Kanye's weird and different and arty and shit, you know. I like God Breathed. So like I tend to like shy away from stuff like this of like, you know, just tons of bars, like kind of stuff everybody wants, and not a ton of change in production, just like a beat that goes really hard and sounds good, but like kind of just does the same thing. But after going through all the lines like this, I mean, it's just another moment that reveals how great Kanye is at building these album narratives and structuring his album, because he isn't somebody that's meticulous necessarily with his storylines. And, you know, it isn't that like this song plays into that song, reveals this about this character. Like you could see like you would see the progression of a character in a movie that goes from scene to scene. Sometimes it's broader than that, and you see like more of like movements and like songs grouped into sections, and the order of them isn't always as important. And I think this kind of fits into that, because this is a song that very much existed in the moment and was fun to be a part of and watch. It was fun to watch it evolve into Gengar. I looked up the second evolution of Ghastly. It's Gengar. To get to that state, it's cool to be part of that, and to now like see that like it wasn't just like an in the moment thing. Like it's something that now fits into the album because of the way Kanye constructs his albums. I don't know. I love it. It's such a cool song in that way, and it has a different energy for me now than it did before.
Success.
Yeah.
Hopefully, everybody listening too, if people have made it this far into the episode, which, you got to wonder, hopefully, for you too, you feel a deeper connection and love for the song beyond just the aesthetics of it and the initial like impressive things about it. But
yeah,
lyrically, it's doing some cool things.
Love it. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything left to say after you've talked this much?
No, just on to the next one. Hurricane is on deck.
Oh gosh, I gotta prepare for Hurricane.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
All right, but until we get there, we need everyone to stay wavy. Is that okay?
Yeah, please. Just keep it loopy.